Since we finished all the Paradox Kanto Legendaries last week, it is now time to take care of the JOHTO ones. I'm really trying my best to make every piece better than the previous one, and the last one of today is my best piece out of all the ones I made so far. We did a vote on stream which piece we wanted to do first, and that was Entei. Since we already had a real Paradox form of one of this trio, we were able to get a lot of inspiration from it. It gives us some design conventions to follow, like the lizard beak, the rocky elements on his head, and the big wavy hair. We started out this piece by removing a lot of his fur, in order to make him seem a bit closer to a lizard. The next thing we did was to make changes to his face. We transformed the shape on his nose into the rocky element, we added some makeup under the eye, and we added an extra point to his crown. The next thing we did was to lengthen his neck, because I wanted to take a bit of reference from sauropods, which are long-necked dinosaurs. I did try to not overdo this, because I feel like these designs are better if you can still clearly see the original Pokemon in it. The piece looked quite flat at this point, so that's why we gave him a rocky belt around his neck. Before we go to the last change we made, we had to change his legs into sauropod-like ones. This would move the design away from being a mammal. The last thing we did for this design was to add the clouds back onto him, but I wanted to make sure it was way bigger than his original form. I made sure to wrap it around his neck, because this shows how tall this Pokemon is. Sort of like a mountain sticking out of the clouds as well. After adding some small scales on his design, we moved on to the colors. We kept most of the colors the same, but we had to add the colored spikes Walking Wake has as well. We also decided to add a lot of shade onto the piece in order to sell the hovering cloud look. Steaming Stone, the Paradox Pokemon. Another legend of a trio of beasts who once perished in an ancient world being brought back to life. One of these beasts, Walking Wake, has been reported as sighted in the Paldea region. The other two have always been a mystery to us, until now. Researchers have found Steaming Stone wandering around volcanic parts in Area Zero. Not only are they tall, they are extremely protective over their habitat. They only have to stomp on the ground once in order to scare most Pokemon away. I really love what we did with this piece. It was definitely a lot of work, since it took me 4.5 hours to finish, but the end result could definitely work next to Walking Wake. Our next piece is a past form of a Raikou. Let me begin by saying that this piece was even harder than the previous one. I did quickly get a concept which I loved, but the execution was so difficult. My idea for this Pokemon was to make him front leg oriented. This meant that his hind legs would only serve to make him able to walk, but his front claws would be extremely big and powerful. We started out by making his proportion fit this path, but I tried using the already existing claws, which we just weren't able to get into the right trajectory. After adding the same conventions we had for the other piece to his face, we made sure to draw our own legs. This instantly looked a lot better and made us move on to the next part. Since we made the structure on his face into rocks, we also had to do the same thing for the tail. After we were done with that, we made sure to tweak the rest of his features and added the tattoos onto the design. The last thing we had to do was to bring back the fur on his back. We started out by making some shapes go around his neck to ground the fur to its body, and then it was time to add the parts on his back. I totally didn't just accidentally make them look like a claw, and it was 100% on purpose. Clashing Claw, the Paradox Pokemon. Researchers caught sight of this fierce, yet majestic Pokemon while camping in the mountains. It is said that with just a look into his eyes, it can instantly paralyze you. This seems to be his hunting technique, so you might not want to give in to the urge of looking at it. I'm extremely happy with the design itself, but the proportions and perspective of some elements are a little bit off. I spent a lot of time trying to fix these issues, but I tried my best, and this is what it turned into. Yeah, I think 6.5 hours on this piece is enough. The third piece for today was a Paradox form of Suicune. Together with my chat we debated if we wanted to make a Paradox form for Suicune, since it already has one. We eventually decided that we had to make one, because I wouldn't be able to say that I transformed every legend without doing this one as well. This meant that we were going to make him into a future form. We have learned a lot about future forms in the past few episodes, and on this one we used even more references to make him look more robotic. One of these details was definitely the segment on his knees. This elevated the design a lot more than the usual changes we give them, but together with them, it actually looks amazing. I was debating on which part to make his lighted area, but we eventually settled on the hair, which opened up the ability to make it into a water psychic type. Iron Flow, the Paradox Pokemon. It is said that on a perfectly dark night, where you can see an aurora in the night sky, following it would lead you to this Pokemon. It seems to not like human contact, because every time we encountered it, it instantly ran away. I still think we have some way to go in order to make perfect future forms, but in my opinion, we're getting closer with every piece. Only less than 10% of you guys are actually subscribed. Don't get me wrong, it's amazing that so many of you are subscribed, but I'm not done with making Paradox Pokemon, and I'm currently working on all the legendaries, so if you wanna see those, please consider subscribing. Our fourth transformation is for Lugia. We did do another poll on stream, deciding on which form we would give this one. My goal is to always make the box legendaries in the opposite forms, just like Miraidon and Koraidon. The majority of the people voted on a past form of Lugia, so that's what we did. I didn't want to make a completely different animal for this one. Instead, I opted to use a lot of features coming off of Shadow Lugia. A few of these features were the spikes on his back, the spiked eyebrows, and we made his toes a lot sharper as well. I did think that these changes alone wouldn't be enough, so we decided to opt into his flying type a lot more. We did this by changing his fingers into feathers, and by adding feathers onto his cheek and backside of his head. The last thing we added was a beak and a few more feathers on his belly, because it looked flat otherwise. For the colors, I was actually debating to use the colors from Shadow Lugia, but I'm glad we didn't do that, in order to follow the Paradox rules a lot better. Don't be sad though, we did bring them back for a shiny. Draconic Sky, the Paradox Pokemon. According to legends, when the Paradox beasts come into conflict, this Pokemon would arrive to stop the conflict and force them to retreat to their individual territories. One flap of its mighty wings is enough to do so. I know this Pokemon didn't change as much as Walking Wake, for example, but like I said before, in my opinion, not every Paradox Pokemon needs to be completely different. The reason why I like Walking Wake as much is because that one is actually quite different, which makes it unique. For the last Pokemon of today, we're taking care of Ho-Oh. Since Lugia was the past form of this region, this one had to be the future one. I had a lot of fun while drawing this Pokemon. It seemed to really work as a future form, and I just kept adding details and they all just clicked. Someone in my chat suggested to make him into a fire-water type, because that plays into the rainbow theme this Pokemon has. I still think that was an amazing idea, but we did have to make sure we added at least one water feature into the design, because Ho-Oh really doesn't look like a water type. We achieved this typing by adding a hose feature in his mouth instead of the tongue he normally has. When we arrived at the wings, at first I wasn't really sure what to do with them. I couldn't add segments to every feather, because that would have made the design way too busy. This made me realize that I could just combine the different feathers, and this worked perfectly for this creature. The last thing we did was to make sure the feathers on the back of his body were combined as well, and then it was time to put in the colors. I debated for a bit which part would get the lighted area, but we decided that the green parts would be the best fit for that, and I'm extremely happy with the end result. Iron Rainbow, the Paradox Pokemon. This Pokemon is known for creating rainbows across the globe, allowing people who live in places where they are never seen naturally to experience their beauty. Rumors say that it also controls the legendary birds in the future, but we don't have enough evidence to back this theory. I already told you in the beginning that this would be the best piece we made out of all of them we made so far, and I still stand by that. I really feel like it's an amazing mix between organic and robotic shapes. I'm definitely proud of this one. Well guys, these were all the legendaries from JOHTO. Next week we'll be uploading a collab with 3 amazing artists, and the week after that we'll be visiting my favorite region, Hoenn. Let me know which design you like most, and goodbye.